Right, I'm going to stop this recording because all this gets used against us at some point. So I'm going to stop.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the second part of our season 12 Doctor Who appraisal. Appraisal? That sounds like we're taking it to a tribunal. Anyway, I'm still P-Bal.
Hi, I'm still James.
And I'm still Jason. Hi.
Are you sure, Jason?
Well, I've had an identity crisis or two in my life, but no, today I'm Jason.
For most people, this is an Earthbound story. For most people, this is a Jason. You saw part one, you'll be absolutely ruffling over that. You'll be ruffling. In part one, so Jason doesn't get upset, we scored Sontaran Experiment 15, Robot 22, and the Ark in Space 23. But there are two stories left, so it is all still to play for. And we move on to the Genesis of the Daleks. Jason, you've got a bit of Scaro behind you, so do you want to start us off here?
I have. I've got some 60s Scaro behind me. And actually, interestingly, when it came to me deciding to choose which design Dalek I wanted to treat myself to, I was in two minds as to which one to go for, whether to go for a 60s Chase or a 70s Genesis, because this story for me is, I'm going to fall into the classic camp here. It is one of the defining stories for me in Doctor Who history. And for me, back where it all began, Davros, the Thals, the Khaleds, but not as we'd seen them previously. So it's a great new take on the Daleks, introducing the character of Davros and effectively changing the sort of direction that had been built up over the years and taking us right back to the very beginning. And that character is just a fantastic addition to the world of the Daleks. Some say Terry Nation's writing was repetitive. I don't disagree in some instances, but the Genesis of the Daleks is a redefined view of Daleks, and I think as such he delivered a very strong script here, and for me, absolute classic, and that's the side of the fence I'm sitting on throughout the rest of this conversation.
Ooh. So it's unusual for you to get off the fence so early.
It's only taken 6 seasons.
Well, I thought I'd lay my cards out here very clearly on this story because I do believe it to be a very true classic.
Okay. Do you see this as a sort of retcon of the Daleks? Because you're right. Where we start, we've reviewed season 1, and we talked about the Daleks when we first meet them, and now you've got more sort of backstory. But you're right. It takes the Daleks in a slightly different direction because of the introduction of Davros. Do you think that it changes it, or is it just an addition to it?
For me, it's an addition. I don't think it changes the destiny as such, because we were introduced to the Daleks in season 1, which we have already reviewed, and I'm sure is on the YouTube somewhere. But we've reviewed it. It's a point in time. The fact that Davros isn't in that story doesn't mean Davros wasn't there. Doesn't mean Davros wasn't there for all the rest of the Dalek stories. It just means that we haven't, at this stage, during whatever time we've landed in, we've just not been introduced to it. Yes, some say it's a conscious decision to try and add a character or a dimension to the aliens, the Daleks, who potentially were flagging a little bit. I mean, it's noted, I think, in some of the story behind the Genesis of the Daleks script, is that Nation turned up with stories that were very, very similar to Planet of the Daleks and Death to the Daleks. And the BBC gave him some steer on what they sort of wanted. So he went away, and as the story is told, he came back with Genesis of the Daleks, added all the character in, and the rest is history. I think it doesn't dismiss any of the previous Dalek stories. Therefore, I think it's still canon and therefore runs in a timeline that works still for me even to this day.
I think firstly I'll say Michael Wisher gives us a tremendous performance as Davros. Wouldn't take anything away from Michael Wisher's one. I think, and especially think it starts a chain of stories whereby the Daleks become guest characters in their own stories. It becomes the Davros show, and I'm not a big Davros fan. I think it hampers things in a lot of ways because especially because 80s Who, as it rolls on, starts to do what New Who has started to do and revel in its own mythology and continuity. But there is a sort of thing of, whereas before the Daleks would have been planning something on there would have been a Daleks, it was kind of like Davros is planning something for the Daleks, and they become a bit submissive with it all, a bit kind of passive, and it's just like, oh my. I imagine something like The Chase with Davros in it. Davros would be pulling the strings, wouldn't he? And he'd be like, you go to that, and he'd be like, oh, it'd be so dreary because you'd have to have Davros in it. If they'd have just done this one story and he died at the end of it, and that was pow, bye-bye Davros, I think that would have been great. But it started a chain, and I'm just not sure I'm a big Davros fan.
Yeah, I think Davros adds something to the Daleks. I think there is an element that the Daleks sometimes can become very predictable, very sort of like, let's just wheel them in. They'll be a little bit menacing for a little while, and then the Doctor will defeat them really easily at the end, by running up a flight of stairs or pushing them out of a window. But what Davros does is add a little bit more menace to it. And this story is really dark. They're essentially Nazis in this story. They're in the black uniform. It's all about supremacy. It's all about wiping out lesser races. There's such a dark tone to it, which if you look back at Dalek, the first Dalek story, the Daleks, it's not like that. Yes, they are nasty, and they're trying to kill the Thals outside the city, but here it's very militaristic. You've got the influence of Davros. I think sometimes his character is a little bit, in other stories, a little bit overused, or it's kind of like the Daleks are sidelined because Davros is there. And even later on in New Who, where sort of David Tennant sort of says, you're the pet, but it still focuses on Davros, even though there's a massive amount of Daleks, it still focuses on Davros rather than the actual Dalek menace. So I think it does detract from it sometimes, but I think in this story, you've kind of got this, I don't necessarily agree with you, Jason. I think it is a bit of a retcon. I think it is a bit of a sort of like, Daleks have got a little bit old news, let's just revamp them, change the colour, bring in a creator and see what we can do with it. And it sort of stems from there. And I think that works. And don't get me wrong, this is one of those iconic stories. All right. And I do get that. And I know it's been voted like #1 fan favorite story, but for me, it still has some faults, and it still has elements of it that I go, I'm not sure. There are some amazing moments in this, the bits where he's holding the wire, the whole speech about, do I have the right? And even though you've got this, evil bunch of tin pots, basically, he still hesitates. He still says, it will make me no better than them if I do this, which is again, a story they come back to several times. Other doctors face the same dilemma. Do I destroy them? Does that make me as bad as they are? And I whether that's overused or not, I'll leave that for you to decide. But I like that element, particularly with Tom, where he's quite a strong character, and you'd think he might be one of the doctors that would just go, yeah, I'm going to touch these wire and get rid of them. But he still stops, and Sarah Jane's there going, do it, Doctor. And he's still hesitating, even though they've got that great relationship, he still pauses. So, there are lots of things in this that are brilliant. There are still things that I would question.
Yeah, I mean, they use a lot of the World War imagery, don't they? With the gas masks and the machine guns, and it's all quite. I don't know if that just feels slightly obvious in my world. I don't know whether it's like I see what you're doing, but it gives you that kind of war film thing. And do you know what? I'm going to put my cards on the table now. I don't like that kind of. I'm probably going to paraphrasing Tom Baker and the Tom Baker years now. I don't mind violence. I do not mind a violent story. I don't mind an over theatrical violence, maybe. But I don't like Doctor Who when it's a bit dark and violent and a bit kind of. It makes me a bit depressed. I think that's why. Spoiler alert: Deadly Assassin is one of my least favourite stories ever. They're so that darkness and that violence is sort of hopeless, that it doesn't offer a sort of brightness to me, and I don't like that. I don't like the lack of optimism in the darkness with it, and that's sort of what I don't like about this. I mean, the powerful moments in it are the violent bits, like when the guy's hanging Sarah Jane over the missile, and he's like, you know, most people are dead before they hit the ground. This is Saturday tea time for kiddies. Sarah Jane, you might be dead before you break your neck. Cheers. That'd be an exit. But it's dark, and it's a bit, and you know, and I get why people like that. I get that. I suspect, especially as you get older with it, you go, this isn't kid stuff. This is quite adult stuff, and I get that. But it's not my sensibility, I suppose.
But it's the iconography of it, because again, I go back to, I've said it a few times in this review, that, you know, this was the first season of Doctor Who as a child. I can actually remember watching most of the way through. And the iconography of this is what stuck with me for years. You know, I had the album, this is really giving away my age now. I had the Genesis of the Daleks album, and I played it till the grooves were literally worn off on it. But when I was playing that, the visuals from that story, even as a 5-year-old child, and obviously I had the record a little later in life, but I could still remember, because we weren't getting repeats, we didn't have video, we didn't have all the nonsense that we've got now. I could remember some of these scenes. So the bit where the Time Lord is on the planet's surface at the beginning of the story, and they're having the interchange about, you know, I brought you here deliberately and we're going to interfere. We want you to sort of stop them. I could still see the visualization that I'd watched as a 5-year-old child. And that's what makes this story extremely strong. I don't disagree. The darkness of it is very consuming, but it's what makes it stand aside for me. So if you look at the Ark in Space, you look at the Sontaran Experiment, stories in their own rights, this story, David Maloney delivers something almost filmic in the approach. You know, studio lighting in 1970s children's television was all bright, and let's just throw all the lights at it. And, you know, the techniques of television weren't finessed. Even the studio scenes in this story, they have a depth. The lighting's down low, you know, the sets are well designed. The planet surface of Skaro looks bleak. It looks uninviting. It looks inhospitable. It looks dangerous. It looks menacing. You've got the Nazi overtones. You've got the oppressed Thals and the Khaleds, who are really on a hide into nothing anyway, because they're all going to, you know, the story is self-fulfilling. It doesn't offer a huge amount of hope, but the hope is there that the Doctor could have changed history as we go through the story. He chooses not to. It gets changed to a degree, but not to the extent where they would ever have wiped the Daleks out of the story. So for me, it's the iconography of this story that really delivers.
I mean, the cliffhanger where Sarah falls off that scaffolding, it's really, you know, they pause her mid-air and then go to the titles. And I remember watching that going, oh my God, you know, it doesn't sort of, you know, pull back on its punches. There's some real moments in there where, you know, Tom's in with the mutants, and then he comes out and he's got it around his neck, and, you know, there are some real sort of horror moments and some real dark elements to it. And there is a part of me as an adult that goes, yeah, I like that. You know, I'm a big fan of horror, so I like those elements. But it just feels very pessimistic. You just, you know, you just want there to be a ray of light, and that doesn't really deliver anything like that. You know, at the end, even when they turn on Davros, you know, they pretty much slaughtered everybody, and they turn on Davros. You know, they've started their own machinery going, so they're starting to replicate themselves. You just know that menace is there, and it's going to be released. You know,
I mean, they do have, there's a sort of a monologue, isn't there, when they all start dancing with the ring, the sort of, you know, maybe what we've done here has not done anything, but it might have done nice things. Whatever the words, I suppose it's the optimistic that we've not killed them. 6 weeks and we haven't destroyed them. But hey, it's not about that. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. You know, if I was going to be unkind, and I would never dream of that. If I had the box of matches and I had the choice of Destiny or Genesis, I'd be warming myself on Genesis. It's just not my style.
Ooh.
I'm gonna
look at Jason's face.
I'm like the Mavellans watching that screen in Destiny of the Daleks right now.
Exactly. There's nothing as cheerful as the Mavellans in this, is there? Susan Daniel doesn't come and light this story up, does she?
I can't wait to see Jason in his Mavellan wig for the review.
Is that not another cosplay idea we've just come up with there? I'm still on Axon Men myself, but if we're now on Mavellan wigs, we'll have a go at that for Utopia, shall we?
It's the same lycra suit. You've got to dye it a different colour. Get your double bubble on the investment.
Oh dear.
No, yeah, that's probably a slight divert on things that we didn't need. I would highlight. There's a lot of really good performances there. Michael Wish is obviously the obvious one in it, but Peter Miles is again, he's sort of one of the Doctor Who stalwarts of doing the villain really well, isn't he? Dennis Chinnery, Tom Georgeson in an early sort of appearance there. There's lots of very great actors, and they're all, you know, treating it as drama. There isn't that performance, and you sometimes get where you get a performance, you think, did you not check the picture? Stephen Yardley. Stephen Yardley's got the most unforgiving costume to be sort of humping around with, and he's playing it absolutely straight. It's you know, there's no messing around with it, which you could easily do. I mean, there are bits of it, I suppose, like the Dalek mutants. I mean, giant clam, it's sort of a Batman thing, isn't it? A giant clam. It's like, that's not so hot. You know, I don't know what Davros was mutating there, but I mean, that wasn't going to get in the travel machine, was it?
No.
But there are a lot of great performances, and Bethan, is it Harriet Philpin? Yeah. Secret lemonade drinker. She's sort of like, oh my god, you'd be a great companion. She's rocking that. But it's for me, it's a bit. Oh, you know, I'm not like a child, but it's just something. Genesis to me, whenever it's like, I mean, it's had its fair share of outings. It's been out more times than, you know, Donna Summer's I Feel Love. It's like every few years it gets another go, doesn't it? So for a story that's been so oft repeated, and obviously is maybe slightly immune to it because of the exposure it's had, I'm less inclined to go with the flow because people say how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting here praising Genesis because it won the #1 poll in DWM or it's perceived as being a classic. It's a story from my childhood that I watched originally. It's a story that has been there consistently through my life of being a Doctor Who fan. It's 6 episodes, and it's 6 episodes. It's a bit like the Daleks. I said that I like the Daleks. I could sit and watch the Daleks on a rainy Sunday afternoon and watch all 7 episodes, consume it quite nicely, even though it had saggy 2 in the middle. Genesis doesn't sag at any point through the story for me. It's obviously paced to be a 6-parter, but this is one of those occasions where I'm going to say that the 6 makes it work because it gives the story additional depth. okay, padded in some people's view, but it gives it some additional depth, because I don't think this could have been delivered in 4 parts, strangely. Particularly with the characterization, Michael Wisher pulls an absolute blinder as Davros in this story. And again, it comes back to acting behind the mask, because it's very difficult for an actor to be able to project, whilst it may have been a part mask or whatever it might have been, it's still very, very difficult to project through heavy prosthetics in that way. And the evil, just the pure evil that is being presented by the acting of Michael Wisher. And you've got Nyder as the sidekick, and they're both as bad as one another, but actually in different ways. They both have different ambitions. Nyder's is all about, he'd double cross his Gran if he could, but it's kind of, Davros has got that single mentality, and Michael Wisher plays it to an absolute T.
I was just sort of reminded of Sylvia James, who we've shouted out before, and I'll shout again because she is lovely. She works part-time now doing sort of tour guide things. And she said the thing that people are always amazed and impressed by is not Steptoe, it's not any of the other, it's like, you did Davros's makeup? Because, she didn't do that, but she did, apply, and, so she says it's the thing that people are always like, Davros, because it's kind of, it's an iconic thing. And I don't take away any of the iconicity of Davros or the performance or anything like that. I would say, I think any 6-part, no, not any, Wang Chang possibly aside, 6-part as a rule, I think you do have. So there's a lot of, let's cross to the Thal Dome, let's walk back to the Dalek Dome, let's walk to the Thal Dome. It's like, let's wait in the middle for a bit, and then let's go back to the Thal Dome.
We've lost the time ring.
Let's get locked up. We've escaped. Oh crap! They found us again. Let's get locked up again. I think there is quite. It's not Frontier in space. We haven't got a lockup every 10 minutes. But I think there are a few where it's like, actually, you probably could have. You could
have some rose-tinted glasses here, possibly, but I get lost in the story in this one, so I don't necessarily notice it perhaps as much as you two.
And I can see that, and I can understand that. I think, whenever anyone posts on Twitter, what's your unpopular opinion? For me, it's always, I think Genesis isn't as good as what people think it is, and that, and then I get sort of thrown off sites and told not to talk to anyone again.
And that's just your views on Genesis that gets that.
That's just my views on Genesis before we get started on any other stories. But I do understand why people do like it, and like I say, as a whole, it is an epic story. There are iconic moments in it, but it's not one that I would go to on a rainy afternoon. That's the thing for me. Is yes, I like Dalek stories, but I'd much rather, and cover your ears, I'd much rather watch like Remembrance of the Daleks on a rainy Sunday afternoon than this.
Much better. Don't you pull your face, Jason Clifford?
Yeah, just because it makes me feel happier than if I watch this. It's like, I've sat through 6 episodes, and
if I want a happy go-to story for a Dalek story, I'll watch The Chase, because The Chase is full of, it makes me laugh.
The Chase is fun as well.
The Chase, it makes me laugh. I'm not going into Genesis the Daleks invested in I know I'm not going to get a barrel of laughs out of this. So I wouldn't watch this on a rainy Sunday afternoon, because this isn't a rainy Sunday afternoon story. This is a dark winter's night type story when, the wind's blowing outside the house, it's a little bit spooky, almost a little bit Halloween, sort of, around that sort of fireworks time. That's when to watch Genesis of the Daleks.
Or during a power cut.
No. I'm just saying there are times to watch good Doctor Who stories, and there are times not to, and there is a time and a place for Genesis, and that's not a rainy Sunday afternoon.
Okay, I like this notion of weather coding the stories now. It's more of a sort of light westerly breeze story with sunshine and intermittent showers. I think that's the ideal time. Yeah. So, are we crawling towards? I tell you, actually, before, the reason that I've got to love Genesis of the Daleks was my wise investment of buying a pristine mint condition hardback version of the novelization all those years ago. I'd be baiting Jason with it on camera, but alas, it's at mum and dad's in a safe place. But
I am so jealous of your mint condition Genesis of the Daleks hardback that sells for over thousands of pounds now on eBay.
I can pay for a hair replacement and a facelift with that hardback. I can end up like Davros. Okay, so I'm slightly, there's a bit of trepidation here now because I think someone's not going to like this. Shall we go to James for his first score on this, shall we?
Ooh, I'm just waiting for Jason's face. It is a classic. It is epic. It is not perfect, though. So I am going to give it 8.5.
8? I thought you were going to really stick the boot in there. I was going to go 2.
No.
Go on, give it a 2.
No, don't get me wrong.
Frank,
I know I've said quite a few critical things. It is still a really, really strong story. I do genuinely like it. It's not one that I would immediately go, oh, I really fancy watching that.
Okay. I mean, gosh, what kind of score is he going to give the ones he does like? Go for what Jason's going to give this.
I mean, Night of the Doctor, I'll just remind you yet again of Night of the Doctor and the score he gave that.
Still hurts. What is this madness?
That gave me goosebumps. I loved that.
Stop the Matrix. Stop the Matrix. Can we get someone else in?
It's on YouTube, folks. Go watch it. It's amazing. Okay.
Go on, Jason. I'm baited for your score.
Well, I think it's quite obvious where I'm going with my score on this one. I have, it is a true classic. I know it's a true classic with many fans, not all fans, but many fans. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions when it comes to these stories. But this is
wrong opinions, is what he's saying. Wrong opinion.
This is a Dalek story that has a real place in my heart, particularly because it's probably the first one I watched live on television. But it's just a bloody good story. And whether you think it's padded or not, or it just is 6 brilliant episodes, introduces a character I think that the Daleks did need in Davros. I think they work well together. You know where I'm going with this score. It's going to be a 10 with my special 10 board that I designed. So there we go. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for Genesis of the Daleks.
How long did that board take you to design? It's quite intricate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Top piece of design here. You've seen it a couple of times on some of the previous videos, but yeah, you know me, like to come well prepared for these things.
Okay. Here it comes. Do you know what? My score has wavered on this. It hasn't wavered in the good place. I'm not going to lie to you. It's had a bit of a... I think I've slightly got to come down to the fact that I don't really like it. But it's obviously better than the Sontaran experiment. But at least the Sontaran experiment only takes 50 minutes out of my life. So, drum roll, kids. This is fearful. This is the fear.
Jason's hiding behind his scarf.
I am literally hiding behind my scarf here.
I'm going to give Genesis of the Daleks 6. I can feel the love coming down the lens from both of you on this.
I can't give you love for that score. I'm sorry. Which story did you watch? Because it clearly wasn't Genesis of the Daleks.
I mean, I wouldn't mind, but even watching the omnibus, it's a bit long.
I was going to suggest you might have watched the omnibus and that's why your score's so low. Because quite frankly, this story is not a 6, not on anyone's scale.
On my scale, Jason, it's a 6. I mean, that's a point per episode. That's a good rate. I know people have used that method before now.
You still
I
haven't
knew this was
given
going
me
to be
the dimensions in
controversial.
time, so I know where this score is coming from.
Dimensions in Time takes 14 minutes out of your life, and there are 14 minutes of joy. Tish Dean doesn't appear in Genesis of the Daleks. Just saying.
I will accept your score because, as I said in my summary of this story, everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Do you know that feels a little bit like in Four in a Bed when someone underpays you by £30? You go, I accept your underpayment and I'll take it graciously. That's what that feels a little bit like.
It so irritates me when they do that on Four in a Bed, where they go, "Oh, you've underpaid me by £1,000. Oh, I can understand your reason for that." I mean, that's like.
Do you know what I love though? Is I toiled with that score probably longer than all of the others put together, because I was like, I'm going to get so much hatred if I don't give it a 10. And I was like, and I was really sort of like, maybe I'll give it a 9, but then I don't think it's really a 9. And then I was like, no, I'm going to stick to my guns and put 8.5. And then when you said 6, I just felt.
I almost gave it 5. Just pointing that out there. That was where it was wavering. It was almost lower.
I was apparently dead to you when I scored Dimensions in Time. We could be on a very similar scale here.
Ooh.
I'll try and get over that. Whilst I get over that, we should
Speaking of
move on
revenge.
to the Revenge of the Cybermen.
Can I just ask for a total summary of how many points the Genesis of the Daleks actually achieved, please?
Oh, okay. Well, we'll wind back, take the caption back. Genesis of the Daleks finishes, therefore, with 24.5 points.
At least it's in the lead.
I mean, we must be thankful because at least none of us are constructing points to alter the outcome.
No, we've never done that throughout the whole of this recording. So
we haven't, have we, Jason?
No,
Okay.
we haven't. You're quite correct.
Are we
None of us know
both
our
giving
scores.
Revenge a 10 then to knock Genesis off the top?
None
I
of us
wouldn't
know our
want to
scores.
preempt that.
No, none of us know the scores before we go into this. But if you both score Revenge with a 10, then I will know there is something afoot here.
Right, so we are now back up to the Nova Beacon, and we've got a Revenge of the Cybermen. So, an absolute shift in it's fun, enjoyable Doctor Who. This is what you want in a box set. This is what you want on screen.
Absolutely is what you want on screen. We had the Daleks, then we had the Cybermen, we've had some Tarans. We are being spoilt a little bit this season. I love the setting of the Nova Beacon. I think we should have had a whole season on the Nova Beacon because we would have got the money's worth out of the set. This is the first story that I owned on sell-through VHS. And it's the first story. P-Bal, no, you're not doing that, sorry. This is the first story that I owned on sell-through VHS. I bought it in Woolies. When it first came out, it was $9.99, and this was actually the story I've probably played the most. Next to Pyramids of Mars and this story, these are the two I've probably watched the most out of any Doctor Who stories whatsoever. It's a great little romp. The Cybermen, they'd been out for quite a number of years, so it must have been a little shock to the audience when they came back, because this was sort of, 7 years since they'd been seen previously. I don't think I'm a lover of the Cybermen design in this story, but we'll talk about that later. But the actual story itself on the Beacon, good story, 4 parts, works well, lots of drama, good suspense, some great comedy scenes, some great stuff on the planet with the Vogons. What more do you want? I think it's a really sound story, this one.
When you say it's a good story, and I'm not going to be unkind when I do point this out, the Vogons on the planet of gold, the Cybermen want to destroy the planet of gold because gold is what destroys them. When the Cybermen go down to the planet of gold, the Vogons shoot at them with regular rifle bullets rather than gold, which is everywhere. The place is gold. There's gold on the floor. There's gold on the walls. It is everywhere is gold. And they're like, do you know our bullets aren't doing anything around here? It's like, do you remember the war and the reason they're going to kill you and the gold? Use some gold.
And they have like pouches of gold dust. You know, the doctor just goes, do you have any gold dust? Yeah, here you go. It's just like scooped it off the floor.
Gold, yeah, got loads of it. Kill Cybermen, you know, so you've got to be careful, don't overuse it. So maybe a slightly flawed story.
Yes, it may have been flawed on that basis, but it's still a good romp.
Oh, I feel we're ripping into Jason's childhood memories today.
Good. If he's not shaking at the end of this, then we have not done a good job.
Safe space.
I mean, the other thing is I sort of said earlier about the arc, the story arc, throwing up problems. Now, Nerva Beacon is something they've travelled back in time to thousands of years. So when the human race in thousands of years' time has to send humanity up in a beacon, they get that grubby old navigational beacon out and go, that'll do. Human race, put in that dirty old beacon that was guiding the Vogan planet. Really? Would you not have made something specific for the job? I sort of liken it to sort of going, you know, would you send someone out on a chauffeur-driven maxi? You wouldn't. You get them a nicer car now. In the future, why would they have done that other than to reuse the sets?
They were very impressive sets. I mean,
it is an impressive set, and I can understand why they want to use it again, and it ties in with what we were talking about earlier and about this unofficial story arc. So although the first one in Robot, they're on Earth, an Earth-based story, Jason. The second one, they're at the
to some people it's an Earth-based story.
People, to other people it's not. But you know, then we've got this sort of collection of stories that start on the beacon and then end on the beacon, and I don't mind that so much. The whole sort of like we've gone back in time and it's now parked up by a planet of gold business, I find a little bit, you know, bizarre. The Cybermen I find quite sassy in this one. You know, we've gone from phase one and to sort of like, you're going to sit here and watch the planet blow up from a front row seat. It's kind of like, you know, he almost does that as he walks out the door.
It was almost as camp as that. I mean, he had a rattle sachet on him, didn't he? The cyber controller in this one.
He likes the hand on hip, doesn't he? But the cyber leader likes a hand on hip motion, doesn't he?
Don't we all, honey? Don't we all?
It's really noticeable. I know you go through sort of different stages of Cybermen and you know, the David Banks type, you know, crush them sort of thing, but this one is quite, you know, sarcastic and just sort of walks off just this way. You're gonna get to see it from a front row seat, love. See ya. just goes. The design, not a classic design of the Cybermen, but I do like the fact that the Cybermen aren't in it straight away. There is an element that they come in later on in the story. There's sort of, you know, the menace that's going on, and there's a lot of double crossing and everything. So I think from that point of view, that's quite an interesting story, because you really do believe that it's I can't remember his name.
Tom Baker.
Yeah, no, not Tom Baker. The one who's got the transmitter in his hairbrush. You know, yeah, you really do believe that he's like the villain, but it turns out, spoiler alert, that actually it was a double cross. But there is that element of that. But there's a lot of horror here. There's loads of bodies all over the floor. You know, the Cybermats, you know, to biting people and giving them the infection and stuff. So there is, you know, quite a lot of death as well. And you're right, the planet of gold, they've got just automated rifles. They're just shooting at each other. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's not for me, it's not one of my favourite Cybermen stories. I find it's not necessarily in the same way as Genesis, where it's quite dark and foreboding. I don't know. There's something about it. It's not one I would rush to go and watch again.
You two are like the anti-fun people. I don't know what's wrong with you. What's wrong with you two?
I like this story.
You don't like Dimensions in Time, so you're tarred with that brush.
I think the story's brilliant. I mean, the stuff in the filming on location at Wookiee Hole, I mean, that really gives the story a little bit of depth.
Yeah, look, incredible. I think Michael Lee, great director. I think he films that are great. The thing, and again, this is something I was going to point out slightly earlier, and it was something I thought was quite prescient with Sontaran Experiment. It's Doctor Who when it titles something that it then spends the episode building up to. So the Sontaran Experiment, revealing the Sontaran, it's like, who else was it going to be? It was not going to be a side. So when it's Revenge of the Side, at least they come in it early enough. But there is that kind of thing of when the title is XY or the XY, you're like, I'm sure, just put it out, I'm sure they're going to turn up at some point. You know, I mean, you could hate sort of Invasion of Time for what it is, but if it's Invasion of the Sontarans, you'd know at some point they're going to crop up. Whereas at least you don't. So when they do it, it's, you know, a shock. But Revenge of the Cybermen, from the outset, you know they're going to be there. And I suppose they do reference them enough in the Cyberman and stuff. But yeah, one of my other reasons for not liking Sontaran Experiment was like, I'm not shocked by the reveal of the Sontaran because you have said that is what this is called. Anyway. Yeah, lots of great. I mean, obviously, you get Roger Murray Leach, great designer, and you get the Gallifreyan symbol, don't you? On
yes, that's curious, isn't it? You get that.
Yeah, like the Tomb of the Cybermen, when they branded themselves as Cybermen, the Vogons have their own brand, and it's the Gallifreyan brand.
Oh, did the Time Lords steal it from the Vogons? They go, we like that. We like what you've done with the wall covering there. We're having that.
Wouldn't put it past.
Or were they working for the Time Lords?
This is a whole box set. There's a whole box set waiting for someone to listen to.
Yes, there is indeed.
Yeah, and because they also said, I mean, Philip said that he doesn't like the design of the Vogons. He didn't like the half mask. I think they look great, actually. I mean, they have a very distinct look. And David Collins, there's a lot of theatrical performance maybe in there, but I think great performances, and I do like the Michael Wisher doing the cold acting as well. That's a nice little bit of character part. Yeah, I think great. I mean, it's a great cast.
Yeah, Ronnie Lee Hunt, obviously, previously in The Seeds of Death, and come back in this one. I like him. He's a great actor, isn't he?
He doesn't have the V thing on his pants, does he? Like his Seeds of Death. He's moved on from that.
He has. It was a shame, but still a good actor.
Yeah, no, I really, really like Revenge, and I think it sort of comes down to the nostalgia element in the same way. Not because I'm ancient like Jason, but because I watched it on video when I was younger. It was on one of the earlier. Jason looking at me, you love. I can feel warmth inside me.
Absolutely, always, P-Bal. You know that.
That's a moment. But it's one I had on a space adventure in 90-minute space adventure. It says on the back, doesn't it? So it was one that, and I really loved it as a VHS. And you know, not because it was the only one that was available, but I just really enjoyed the story.
The regulars at this stage, I think, really had hit their stride. Liz and Tom were a great combination, and really the stories have built up to get us to this stage. Although this was the third film rather than the fifth film, but you can still see that they're coming together. You know, Harry Sullivan is an imbecile. What a great line that is. I mean, that's worth a point on its own. Harry Sullivan is an imbecile. We come back to talking about Harry's either the hero or the imbecile. There's no in between. So the character doesn't get the light and shade that he needs. But still, as a team, as a TARDIS team, I think they're working really well. Liz and Tom, obviously, it was clear by this stage where the real chemistry was in this companion group. And you know, this story showcases it perfectly. Sarah's in peril, the Doctor's on the planet, you know, it's proper classic Doctor Who for me.
Ankles, or rather fetlocks, like a cart horse. He's breaking her. He's great. Lots of great bits. Like, at the end, when he's like, I bet Rocket's still coming. Better let him know because he's a bit forgetful. And then it cuts to him manically trying to stop her. She's like, "Oh, very much aware of that. Thank you." Yeah, it's great, and it's great. But you can sort of see why they couldn't keep going with the character in some ways, because it's what it is, and you can obviously see that Tom and Liz are a duo.
Just work well, don't they?
There isn't any point to anyone else being the spare part, and as awful as that sounds.
I love the bit where she gets in the little boat, and it's so. I mean, the location is like you say, is really, really good. And she gets in the little boat and scoots off. She's so independent and sort of matches the Doctor by this point.
That's the lethal boat moment, isn't it? Worth saying is that it is the moment, isn't the lethal boat where Terry Walsh, as we mentioned before, jumps in and saves her at that point.
I mean,
look at the story; it's a good story.
Health and safety. I mean, Liz worked really well with John, and they worked well. But for me, you know, John would always be associated, you know, with the Joe Grant companion. Sarah becomes Tom's companion. For me, they become. This is where she hits her stride. She has a season with John, but hits her stride with Tom, and that's what I think has made her such the quintessential companion, if you like, because that combination of Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen, I think, is very, very hard to beat out of any of the combinations that we've had for Doctor Companion.
It's one of the sad points, I suppose, about Five Doctors, isn't it, that you don't get Tom and Liz, but you get nothing wrong with John and Liz, and obviously that worked as well later for the radio and all that wouldn't take. But yeah, the character works better with Tom. I think the independence works better with the Fourth Doctor, because the Third Doctor is a bit more paternal, I suppose. I think he works, and that's why the Joe Grant thing works, because he's sort of guiding, and whereas there are things, obviously, the different characters they wouldn't do. Dexter actually asked this only last night. He's like, "What do you think it is about Sarah Jane? Do you think it's the character? Do you think it's Liz? Or do you think it's the era of the show? Because she sort of is the one that people put at the top, I suppose, as the defense."
I think it's Liz. And I think you get the same reaction when you see her in school reunion. It's like time has frozen and she suddenly pops up with a different Doctor, and the relationship is the same. You immediately get that chemistry with the two of them, and you get that with Tom, and you get that with John, and I think Liz herself brings a warmth and a just something to that character that makes you want to see her, you know, being safe, and want to see her do, you know, have adventures. She's not a screamer. She throws herself in. She, you know, she has her own mind. She sometimes, you know, will say to the Doctor, no, I don't agree with you. But there is a sort of very natural part to her that I just find anything I watch her in, you know, I'm captivated by her. I like seeing her on screen.
But Jason was going to hurl his opinion in then, and it stopped.
No, I've made my opinion clear. I think they're the definitive companion Doctor combination. Liz Sladen will always have a special place in my heart. She was the first companion I grew up with, and you know, I was terribly sad when she left the series in the Hand of Fear, and you know, I remember being quite upset about that. She is one of the companions, and yeah, she's royalty in my eyes.
Right. So are we heading now, do you think, to a score on the Revenge of the Cybermen?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Well, just wait. Jason, should we go to you first for your thoughts on Revenge of the Cybermen?
I don't know if I'm happy, actually. I just think we ought to flip this one round on its head, actually, for a change. Why would you like to go first, P-Bal?
Yeah.
Because you've never gone first with the scores. I think it would be really nice.
But you know, when you see like a film and you get the top bill, the second bill, and you get with as the most important person, it's kind of like that with the scoring. Do you know what I mean? But as an altruistic move, I am happy. I'm happy in this instance if you would like me to give my score first.
Well, you are our head judge, so I think it becomes. It's nice to just mix it up and keep it lively, keep it edgy.
Well, in the words of Sherilyn, Saskia, and LaPierre, follow this, you bitches. I give Revenge of the Cybermen 9.
And that's a very good, strong score.
Oh yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I wasn't. Can I just ask, did you take a point off for the fact that they didn't have gold guns?
No. Do you know what? I think, as an important point here, I rate them as I enjoy them, not as I would think they are, or what their status is, or necessarily how good they are, if that even makes sense. I can tell that something's maybe better acted than another one, or better scripted than another one, but I'm going on my actual sentiment and where my heart. I'm going to vomit in a second. It's gross. No, I just my reaction to it and how I feel about it. Not, I think the review is happy to discuss the elements of it. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, Genesis of the Daleks is a better piece of drama than Revenge of the Cybermen, but I prefer Revenge of the Cybermen. It made me feel much happier.
It's a much lighter story, and I think I'm not against. I think the score you've given it only shocked me because I was expecting you to go at low for some reason, and I misread that possibly.
I don't always go low.
No, indeed you don't, and I think it's a fair score for a fair story. I'll take my punt next and actually come in second on this, which means James gets the honour of being last for once, which is kind of a nice treat there for him. Like you, P-Bal, for me, this is a really light, easygoing story. I've watched it so many times I could probably read half the script out. It's kind of that familiar to me. This is good quality Doctor Who of its era, with two of the best regular actors we've had in the series. Obviously, Ian's very, very popular with me, but the two, the combination of Liz and Tom, you've got Cybermen, can't go wrong. Might not like the costumes, can't go wrong. You've got the Ark back, you've got the Menace on the Planet, great location filming, jolly good romp, as I said at the start, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Can I just interject? I didn't say I like the Cyberman design. I like all the tubing, and I like the gun in the head. I love all that. You miserable old queens. I like a bit of the 70s style.
How can I be a miserable queen?
you did it with the caveat of I don't like the design. That's great designs. I kind of cyber disco. It's loving that.
It is on record that I love the 10th Planet Cybermen, and they are the best and will never be beaten.
Okay. James, where are you at on Doctor Who and the Revenge of the Cybermen?
I'm feeling really refreshed after my little nap while Jason's talking, and
have you been hibernating for 10,000 years?
I did. I had a little. I think I might have a sort of Wirren baby inside me now. It's rather disturbing. It's no Sontaran, but it's no Genesis, and so I scored it an 8.
Oh, I don't know whether Jason's done the maths on this or not. Okay, that concludes the jury votes then on season 12. So, in 5th place, I didn't do a score for Revenge because I thought it gives a bit of anticipation here. 5th place, Sontaran Experiment, 15 points. 4th place, Robot on 22 points. 3rd place, it's the Ark in Space on 23 points.
Oh, I know it's coming.
Second place, we have Genesis of the Daleks on 24.5, which means our season 12 winner by just half a point
Oh!
on 25 is Revenge of the Cybermen. How do we feel about that?
Do remember to add your comments underneath, because I think Jason will be adding his comments when this goes live.
I'll be adding my comments right now. You swines, you have manipulated those scores.
I scored first, as you might recall, on Revenge of the Cybermen. At your insistence, I scored first.
Indeed.
And I scored it the same as you did. So
actually, for the first time in doing this series, I don't agree with the end score, I'm afraid. However, everyone to their own opinion, as I've said a number of times through this recording today. So well done to Revenge of the Cybermen. It's very hotly contested. They are chalk and cheese in story terms. Genesis, Revenge.
A bit Marmite.
They're light and shade to one another. But well done, Revenge of the Cybermen.
he said through gritted teeth.
Half a point. So close. So close you could feel the firepower.
I think I gave James too long to consider his score there, I feel.
Is the moral for the future, don't take so long giving your score?
No, because they'll just make it longer, I think.
No,
I'm
so,
kidding. Good.
But yes, so that is our judgment on this. Obviously, Genesis should have been lower. But put your thoughts and views below. Like, subscribe, all that sort of chisel.
Yeah, come on, guys. Give us some Genesis love in there. Give us some Genesis love. Let's see everybody's opinion on this. Drop it in. Tell us whether you think Genesis is a classic or not and deserve to come second place.
Hashtag justice for Kroll, justice for Dimensions in Time.
Hashtag
now,
justice
hashtag justice for Genesis.
Justice for Genesis.
But people might think it's the pop group. It might start. You might get the Phil Collins fans in on that.
Hashtag no justice for Genesis.
Locked up or something.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you to Jason and to James.
Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, thanks, P-Bal. Lovely to have been back and doing another review with you all.
I would, if the angle was wide, to do my John Pertwee who'd done it goodbye. So thank you everyone for watching, and we shall see you soon. Bye-bye.